All right, we are live. Patriot Station Podcast is live. We are here with Kyrie Thompson from WEEI. He's coming in clear. Coming in clear. Took a little
Finally,
time, but he's
finally.
clear. So
Yeah.
it's great. Also, the host of the First and Foxborough podcast. If you're not listening to that, bro, you got to get on that because he's got some fantastic guests already. But Kyrie, we appreciate you coming through, man. Thank you so much for stopping in.
Oh, of course. Anytime, my man. Sorry it took me 20 minutes to get this setup figured out. I went through both of my laptops, and for one of them makes it look like I'm coming to you from the Twilight Zone, and the other one has me lagging by like 15 seconds. So just whatever,
It's all right though.
whatever
It's all
works.
right. Yeah, we got to get it done. Sometimes the technology doesn't cooperate. You know what I mean? Now we got you with your Peloton in the background, and
Yeah.
we got the whole thing going.
I get some work in on this thing. I mean, not so much
Man,
back gold now. It's like,
I know.
why do it? Because I mean, it's so warm outside. You might as well just go run outside. But
Yeah.
I mean, on days when it's too hot outside, or
Mhm.
especially in the wintertime, I was
It's
getting it in.
it's unbelievable how much you can get in a 20-minute ride. It's like ridiculous, man. I'm
I'll tell you
dying and
what, I
sweating.
I was I did a ride over the weekend for the first time in a little while, and oh, that was tough. Like
Mhm.
I was really going for it. It was only a 20-minute ride too. See, for me, I'm a former sprinter, so I don't do the whole like, oh yeah, I'll let 40 minutes or an hour. I ain't
Yeah,
got time
yeah.
for all that. It's like nah, man, 20 minutes tops. And
I'm the same
that
way.
was getting me. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm the same way. I wasn't a former sprinter. I mean, I guess I was technically a former sprinter, but I didn't run very fast. But So, anyways, let's get into Patriots camp. Obviously, everyone knows Patriots camp started on Wednesday, so we've had the first 3 days of camp so far. And you've done a great job of breaking everything down. You've talked to a bunch of people. Talked to Trey Nixon, my boy Trey Nixon. Man, you got a one-on-one exclusive with
Yeah.
him. That was a great
He's
interview with
great.
you.
He's a
Yeah,
great talker, man. Like he's like very, I mean, obviously very down to earth about his situation and everything, but just like off the field, a very humble guy. And I think he's just got the right stuff to make it on this team. It's just a matter of now whether or not he produces.
right.
And I mean, so you were there today.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so you saw that fade route he pulled in. I mean, maybe Sean Wade takes that away if he's not wearing the oven mitts, but I mean,
Right.
still like for Trey to go up and get that ball.
Still a nice play.
Yep,
Yep. Still a nice play. So, he had a drop. He had a drop in the far end too. But it's like you're gonna drop passes. It is what it is. So, all right, but let's get into it. There's a few guys that I really want to talk about. I mean, the first one to me is the most important one, and that's Mac Jones. I think Mac has been pretty much locked in. I mean, like he's looked pretty solid. Of course, he had that, the end of practice yesterday where they, were 0 for 10 or 0 for 11 throwing,
0 for
between
11,
him
yeah.
and Hoyer and Zappy. But for the most part, he's been pretty locked in. He had that interception of Jalen Mills today, which was clearly a miscommunication with somebody. It's funny because Hunter Henry was on the other side of the field and he was like, "Hey, my bad." And I was like, "Wait, what?" He was on the other side of the field.
So the intended target on that play was Jacoby Myers. So basically what happened is, because it happened towards our end,
right,
is he thought Myers was going to sit down by the goal line.
Yep.
And instead Myers broke it outside and he throws it where he thought Myers was going to be, which it would have been a contested catch, but in the end, it ended up being just the easiest interception Jalen Mills is probably ever going to have.
Right,
and threw it right to him, and so
yeah,
I mean, Mac was kind of like gesturing to Myers, obviously, but I think he was also I think he might have wanted to go to Hunter Henry first, perhaps, and Hunter was just like, "Yeah, my bad, like I did the wrong thing there," so he moved away from him and tried to go backside.
Right. And so you think it's one of the, and it's funny because that's the type of thing that they're doing right now. I mean, they're not full pads. It's just it's almost like today was almost like a walkthrough, right? They weren't super. They were competitive a little bit at times, but they're not super competitive right now. They're just shells, and so it's just about the mental stuff right now. And you see like one mistake, right? Mac reads it wrong, or Jacoby reads it wrong, or Hunter Henry reads it wrong, and it's a pick six going the other way, right? And so those are the things that they got to get figured out. But I think overall, I think I've seen a little bit extra zip on his passes, a bit, not a ton, right? It's hard to see because they're not really throwing the deep ball much. But I've seen a little bit of extra zip, and I just think he's just been very precise. That pass to Jonnu Smith today in the back of the end zone on Kyle Duggar. I mean, I know Duggar's been getting worked a little bit. That's unfair. That's just, there's no way you can stop that.
Yeah, I mean, Duggar's been getting. It seems like he's on the business end of every highlight that's happened so far in camp. He's got by Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, all of it. But the thing is, like, these are by and large, I mean, the passes are just perfect, right? And I saw a fan angle of it. It was just really just right on the money. And the coverage isn't bad. Like Duggar's right there. He's in his hip pocket. If Mac Jones throws that ball where where the route kind of suggests that it would go, which is a corner, right?
Right.
Then Duggar's in perfect position to play that ball and potentially pick it off. But the thing is, they've been working this for the last 3 days. These back shoulder types of throws, both in that kind of situation where it's like, okay, like I'm running towards the back line of the end zone and I'm going to throw it behind you, right? Or I'm running towards the sideline and throw it behind you. The Aaron Rodgers, if you will.
Right.
But
yeah.
they also pulled off, and the play that I thought was quietly just as impressive, right? Even though it wasn't like a leaping catch where Jonnu Smith has to toe tap and everything. But right after that, Jonnu Smith has a route where he's running horizontal. So he's running parallel to the back line of the end zone. I can't remember who was in coverage on the play, but Jonnu
I think it was Duggar again.
It might have been. It wouldn't surprise me, right? But Mac Jones sees it and throws it intentionally behind Jonnu Smith, and they've been repping this for, again, the last couple of days with the tight ends and receivers. It's like, look, when you've got a defender in front of you, and they have their back turned to the quarterback, you're open, right? Like you can see the ball because you're looking at the ball, you're looking at the quarterback, but the defender can't. So Mac throws it behind him, and Jonnu knew exactly what to do because they've been practicing it this whole time. And he makes the grab. It made it look easy, but that's not an easy play.
Right. And that's exactly what you're looking for, right? And those are the types of things that I think, really kind of exemplify what they're doing. And I think now too, and I pointed out yesterday on Twitter about how Belichick has kind of fostered this, learning culture and learning environment, and how nobody's afraid to ask questions. And they're always, there was a drill where he was, he went and talked one-on-one with the receivers and was coaching them about stepping out. And then they started running the drill again, and Jacoby immediately walked over and basically asked for clarification from Belichick, right? And that's the type of stuff that I'd love to see. And there was one instance of that, and then this next guy is involved in that. Devonte Parker, who's looked fantastic, I thought. Jalen Mills had a play where he got over Parker's shoulder and knocked one down at the goal line, and it was at the end of max time in there. I think just 7-on-7, and Belichick took the two of them over there and was coaching them up on, hey, look, whatever they both did collectively, he wasn't happy about it. He said, okay, the ball needs to be down lower, or you need to post up more so he has more, space down low, whatever the case may be. He's there saying, hey, look, this is the way it needs to be run. So when you get to that spot and post up at the goal line, he can't jump over and grab it because you have him boxed out. Mac throws it down low so he can't get to it, all those different things. But either way, I think I love what Belichick has done.
Yeah.
And this has been happening forever, but like you've seen more of it now that you have a second-year quarterback. But it's never a, hey, why are you asking questions? Like it should be, if you don't understand, ask a question. We'll talk about it again. We'll go over it again. Like ask for clarification before you go out and run it like an idiot, right? And that I think is just so important, and something that I think that doesn't get talked about a ton with Belichick, where everyone talks about how he's a great coach and a great teacher and everything. Part of being a great teacher is having your students understand it's okay to ask questions, right? And okay to question things.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, that was something that I talked with Jalen Mills after practice, and that's something that came up when talking about the rookie corners, the two Joneses, Marcus and Jack. Yeah. And I asked him about what his impressions of them were and how they were coming along and what advice he had for them. And essentially that was his advice was, look, never be afraid to ask questions. And if you're not doing something right, like, look, you're going to come into this and maybe you were the man where you came from in college, but here, this is a whole new system. It's a whole new environment, and everybody's good here. Right. So you need to find whatever edge possible. And that's what he said that they're doing. He said, look, the first thing that came out of his mouth when I asked him that question was, the best thing is they're asking questions, right? They're in meetings. They're trying to figure it out. They're not afraid to ask. And he's like, that's going to help them out. So, this is a team that thrives on detail, right? Attention to detail, doing your job to a T. And that's how you get a team that found a way somehow to win 7 games with Cam Newton as its quarterback. And not even just about Cam Newton. I mean, they were missing a whole lot of stuff on defense, right? but they were able to stay competitive in those games because they're so well prepared. And last year, you win 10 games with a rookie quarterback. That stuff doesn't happen by accident. It's
Right.
because they execute. And obviously, they realized that they had a little bit of a talent deficiency. And so they tried to address that in subtle ways and maybe kind of revamp their roster. I mean, you can argue about whether or not it was done enough, but certainly the idea that they have tried to adjust and account for that. But in the end, as long as you have Bill Belichick, and people might overrate it, but I really think that the more you're around it and you see about the way that he interacts with his players on the field, the way he interacts with his coaches, the sheer amount of things that he knows and can talk about. I mean, for example, I was talking to Karen Garegian of the Boston Herald after this, and after practice today, and she was saying, look, when Josh McDaniels was coming up as the quarterbacks coach, like before he like fully took over the offense and stuff, Bill Belichick was the running the quarterback room. He took that on. So this is not new to him, right? Having all the say in the offense, having the say in the wide receiver room. Like he knows his breadth of knowledge about football and the specificity of what he wants done, how he wants to see it done. It's unmatched in this game. So you can say like, well, like Belichick's not that special because I mean, look, he hasn't won a title without Tom Brady, but I mean, you just got to see it every day sometimes,
right?
To realize what it is that he is accomplishing day in and day out with new players and keeping rosters competitive all the time, because that doesn't happen in the NFL all the time.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The other thing is it's a league that not so much as it is in the NBA, but it's a league that where coaching is important, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, we saw it 2 years ago with Bruce Arians. Like coaching is important, but it's not that important. Like we can get by with the best players even if we don't have the best coaching, right? So,
yes.
And Belichick has proven that he can win, even with crap players, even with Matt Castles as a quarterback, he can still go 11-5, right? So, anyways, I think it's interesting, and I think we don't need to go over the whole Brady Belichick thing, and I don't even want to get into it, but I do want to though touch base on the Jones brothers there, Marcus and Jack. Obviously they're not brothers, but the Jones brothers, Marcus and Jack, and them coming in. Marcus was my guy. He was the only. I did one draft. I mean, I will never ever stop bragging about it. I did one draft profile on Twitter, and it was Marcus Jones. And I in my mock draft 1.0, which came out before the Super Bowl, I had them picking Marcus Jones at pick 85, and I'm like, it's unbelievable. So, anyways, I'm super excited about him. He's been mixing in with the ones, in that slot spot, and of course, Jonathan Jones is hurt right now, but. I feel like he doesn't look out of place. And he's not making like flash plays, but he looks like he belongs out there, which is important for a guy who's played 3 days of NFL football.
And then you look at him, he doesn't look imposing from a physical standpoint. Yeah. I mean, like I'm like what, 5'5", right?
Right.
Let's say I'm not a big dude, but it's like I go down there, you stand next to him, and it's like he's not that much taller than me. I mean, he's thick, like he's clearly like thick and rocked up and everything. But I mean, he's out there scrapping with Devonte Parker, and Devonte Parker's boxing him out, and I mean, there's not a whole lot Marcus Jones can do about it. But he comes back from that the next day, and he's in Kendrick Bourne's hip pocket, helping force an incompletion. Like right now with Jonathan Jones out, so. Well, there's 3 Joneses in that cornerback team. Right? That's going to be fun, right? But he's stepping in right now as like the number 1 slot corner guy, and I thought this could be something that might happen, right? Whether it was this year or the following year, the idea that Marcus Jones could be a contributor potentially this year as a slot guy because of the speed that he has and the quick twitch that he has, and I think that first day of camp. Both Marcus and Jack had their moments where they were getting picked on a little bit. And it was kind of like almost like, okay, welcome to the NFL. You got to step your game up a little. And if you remember, Marcus Jones was in the red non-contact jersey for OTAs and minicamp. So he wasn't really in the mix. This was his first time kind of being out there like, hey, like let's get you some snaps and see how you're doing. And I think that they answered the bell. They've answered the bell in the last couple of days. And just started, showing up and as you mentioned, putting themselves in the mix, getting, sticking their nose in there and generally playing good coverage. And Jack Jones, I'll tell you what, every single time the ball comes near him, he is looking to make a play. Like, I think that they, obviously you expect that from defensive backs. So I'm talking about even in drills where they're teaching things like, okay, when the ball's on the back line of the end zone, like a back shoulder throw, how do you play the ball? And a lot of the cornerbacks, like the veterans and things, they are playing through the hands. They are not looking for the football. They're trying to play through the hands and just like rip the ball out. Jack Jones is always trying to turn and find the football because he wants that interception. He wants to play the football and get his hands on it. And so you see that like every single time he has an opportunity, he's trying to rip the ball out of your hands. I mean, he had Kendrick, he had good gracious, Christian Wilkinson.
There it is.
That's
yep.
like, yeah, Christian Wilkinson. He had him in hell back in minicamp trying to jam him up. Like he almost like put him in the turf. Like it was something else. And Christian Wilkinson gets up and makes the catch, but then Jack Jones like puts him on the ground almost again because he's got his arm in there trying to rip it out. Like he's a fiend. I love it. I love the mentality of both of these young guys. And I think that the way this cornerback room is constructed, there's absolutely room for them to play this year.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's I just find that so fascinating because especially with Jack Jones, where he's like 170 pounds, right? When that guy, gets a year in the NFL, puts some weight on, and he's already that aggressive, that's a guy that could be, a solid starting corner, in the future at least. So we'll see. But I'm super excited about both of them. I think they needed the cornerback help, but they're getting the cornerback help. It's important. Jonathan Jones is a free agent after this year. So even if he is, hopefully he is able to come back healthy, you still might be missing someone next year. So, we'll see. I think, we talked about, you talked about earlier, the fact that they were devoid of talent a little bit. Right. And so, but you start looking at the last two drafts with Ramondre, who's looked really good this camp, and with and with Mac Jones, obviously, and with Barmore, and and all these guys that are coming through, you're like, okay, now we're starting to see, and then Marcus and Jack Jones and Cole Strange. The offense defensive line right now, like you can't see anything.
It's
but
true,
the athleticism is legit.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. So you can't really see anything like for real, right? Because they're not blocking each other for real.
Right.
But I was watching a little bit of their inside zone game today, just like the little bit that they do right after they do 7-on-7s, right? And then they'll go through, kind of like walkthrough style. They'll go through the running attack, and I just wasn't even necessarily looking at Cole Strange on a given snap. I was just kind of looking at the lineman steps to see what kinds of plays that they were running, and typically it was inside and outside zone most of the time, and Strange just explodes out of his snap and like kind of the thing with like the zone block, right, is that you kind of get one guy's getting a double team and kind of going up to the linebacker, and he's quick. He is quick. He is aggressive. He is mean when he gets his hands on you in space. Like he's on you. Like he's not playing around. And I think that was the thing that I noticed is that like his athleticism, as you mentioned, is something else. And just like the speed with which he is playing right now as a rookie,
right?
Like it's not a stretch to say that that's a Pro Bowl guard potentially in a couple of years. Maybe not this year. I feel like the way that the offensive line looks to me, right, is that Michael Onwenu is your Shaq Mason replacement. Both in terms of position and also it's close as you could get in talent. And actually, if you look at it, Michael Onwenu graded out ever so slightly better than Shaq Mason did, which people forget a lot. I've seen a lot of people like, that was your highest graded player. Actually, no, he wasn't. It was Michael Onwenu. But on the other side of things, you're looking at Cole Strange as being your Ted Karras replacement, right? Like, what can you get from a solid? So Ted Karras was a solid veteran presence. He wasn't amazing, but he did his job and he did it well, right? And you're looking at Cole Strange and being like, look, your level of talent should hopefully minimize the drop off from what we would have had with Ted Karras. And it just happens to make everything a whole lot cheaper and more affordable on your offensive line.
Yeah.
But you can absolutely see it with this guy when he's getting out in space. They had him out in screen blocking yesterday, and he just belongs on the move.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and like you say, okay, this year he's replacing Ted Karras, but maybe next year or in 2 years he's replacing Joe Tooney, right? And he's taking that level of, and that's what we're hoping, right? Is that he takes that level of play instead of it being Joe Tooney. It's Cole Strange. And I think the athleticism today at the end of practice, which was such a fun drill, and that's people are like, oh, Belichick does this, and Belichick does that. That's one of the most creative things I've seen with Marcus Jones and Trey Nixon going back and forth trying to catch punts, and they got 4 balls in their hands trying to catch the 5th one. It was awesome, and they're fired up about it. And then they both catch 5, which was crazy. I don't know how the hell you catch 5 punts at a time.
I think the record. I was hearing people talk about this. I think the record is apparently 7. I don't know who did 7 though.
That's insane. Someone with super long arms, probably. But and then he when he made the catch with the second one, he's full on sprinting with the ball in his left hand and comes up with the catch one-handed. That was unbelievable.
And that ball was wobbling. You could see it. That ball was swinging in the air, and he reads it and makes the catch like that. That's an incredible athlete. And I mean, like you talk about, a relative athletic score. Like that guy was one of the 10 most athletic guards to like come out of the draft in the last 35 years.
Right.
And you can see every little bit of it, but I think it's not just about the athleticism, it's the mentality. He is aggressive, he is mean. Like, and he's not going to stop playing until the echo of the whistle, like the echo of the echo of the whistle. Because I mean, like you saw it in OTAs and minicamp. I mean, ball on the ground, he's going for it. He doesn't care if Matthew Judon's ankle is there. Yeah. It's like Malcolm Butler caught an interception off a tip ball. He's running downfield and wrapping up, Malcolm Butler. Like he only knows how to play one way.
Which is great, and that brings you right back to Logan Mankins. I mean, it's just like, you're like, oh yeah, yep, love that. So, but all right, Tyquan Thornton, he's been running with the ones, he's been there, he's around, now of course, and again, it's not fair to Tyquan. It's not fair to Tyquan, but the same thing happened to N'Keal Harry. There's already reports out of Steelers camp. George Pickens looks unbelievable. I wanted the Patriots to take George Pickens at 29. I wanted the Patriots to take George Pickens at 22. And then they're at 29. I'm like, oh, this is Pickens. Nope. And then they trade up to 50. I'm like, oh, this is nope. I'm like, oh my God. Dude.
Yeah.
So, but what have you seen from Tyquan Thornton? I think, look, it's hard to see. And the speed has been difficult to see, except for moments of it. You'll see moments of it, but then but it's hard to see because they haven't done anything more than 10, 15 yards downfield yet,
I mean, exactly, because everything that they have done has been high and low red zone. Literally everything they've done has been inside the 20-yard line over the last 3 days. So no, you have not gotten a chance to see Tyquan Thornton really open it up. And it is interesting that you mentioned Pickens, because I feel like of those second round receivers, he probably had the most upside, and the only reason he was even there was because he was hurt. He's coming off an injury, right? That's that, and I think people had a lot of character concerns about him. So that was obviously that honestly might have been the bigger reason. But with Tyquan Thornton, it's the upside that's tantalizing, right? Because he has, like, there are fast guys, and then there are people like Tyquan Thornton where like that's different speed.
Yeah.
Like that. I'm not exaggerating. It's Tyreek Hill level in terms of like it's not just the 40, but how quickly he can get up to it. And he hasn't quite been doing that yet, except when he's on punt gunner coverage. Like, oh boy, when he's a punt gunner, he's really opening it up. Yeah. No one can run with him. And I feel like I've only seen it the one time where he really got a deep ball, where he kills Miles Bryant off the line of scrimmage, and then everybody else, then it's off. The race is on and no one's catching him.
Yeah.
But what you've gotten to see is the intermediate stuff, how he's working on the rest. And what I've seen is that whenever the ball goes in Tyquan Thornton's direction, it's not hitting the ground. Yeah. Not one time have I seen this guy drop a pass. And that includes the ones where he's diving out of bounds, and maybe it's not technically a catch, but he had one today where, I mean, he's like almost parallel to the ground. And he's not dropping that thing. He got smacked by Joan Williams yesterday on the goal line making a catch, held on to that. I mean, and that was one thing that I heard from guys who watched him at the Shrine Bowl, is is that you look at his figure and you think like, that guy can't deal with jump balls. Like he's not going to deal well with like press coverage and stuff like that. And they were like, oh no, Tyquan Thornton's a dog when the ball is in the air.
Yeah.
He does not give an inch. He wants to beat you every single time. And they were like, he was winning most of those jump ball situations. It didn't matter who was on him. And I feel like you've seen a little bit of the catch radius, the potential that he's got to kind of be, if he puts on a little bit of weight, like he could be an outside receiver. And I think that's the potential ceiling that we're talking about here, is that with his speed, if he can gain any kind of weight, that he could potentially be a guy who plays outside and can block. He's got a little bit of explosive kind of upper body strength to him that is a bit underrated. I saw him working against Malcolm Butler, and there have been times where, sometimes like you get into his chest a little bit. I mean, he's kind of thin. You can stop him, but he gave Malcolm Butler a stiff arm, like a little forearm shiver working on the routes, and he had Malcolm Butler about to fall down. I mean, he's not a joke. And when you see him up close, he's skinny. Like, let's not get it twisted here. He's skinny. He's got skinny wrists, though I don't think that actually matters. But you see his lower body, like he's pretty wiry and jacked and strong. Like he's not a pushover, is basically what I'm saying. And he's made himself available. He's been working on the finer points of running the routes, and Bill Belichick's been working with him, and the receiver coach has been working with him about using his arms more, coming in and out of breaks. But I feel like he is showing enough to me right now to where you can put that guy in, you'll be able to put him in a game, and he will be able to do what's asked of him and produce and make catches. I don't think he's headed for a purely red shirt year, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And look, I the whole draft process with him was very strange because he comes in, he runs that crazy 40 time, and then he's still a 5th, 6th round pick. I didn't even watch any film on him because I'm like, this guy must suck. Like if he went to the combine and blew up the combine like that, and they still have him as a 5th, 6th round pick, I'm like, this guy must be terrible. He's just a sprinter. Like he's not, he's nothing.
Yeah, that's
and they drafted, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They drafted him in the 2nd round, and I'm watching film, and I'm like, this guy doesn't look like some random sprinter. Like he can get off the line. He's like physical he'll take a hit while catching the ball. And it's just like, I didn't understand the evaluation process from him, from the evaluation, the rookie media, whatever. I was just like, I didn't get it. Like he's a lot better than I thought he was going to look when I threw the film on.
That's exactly how I felt about it.
Yeah.
And I think that it really is just about the frame, because he is so slight, and I think he absolutely got pigeonholed into that stereotype of him just being a fast guy, skinny guy who can't handle the position. And I don't think that the film backs that up. I mean, there are times where he gets pushed around a little bit. It's true, and as a rookie, you might struggle with that a little bit, but you can see it in the scouting reports where people are talking about it. He's tougher than you think he is.
Right.
And the other thing is that he has a fairly well-developed understanding even now of how to find windows in zone, where he's not just running like aimlessly across the formation, just being like, oh yeah, I'm just going to be faster than you. And I'm just going to like run across the field and throw me the ball. It's like, no, when he's running a slant or running an in route or something like that, he's always looking for the right place to settle down. And so it's not just about the speed. It's clearly about his mind, his mentality. When you listen to him talk about it, and I heard Jacoby Myers talk about it earlier today when I was standing across from him, that again, he's like, the best thing about Tyquan is that he always wants to learn. He wants to be coached. And I feel like that's the part of the process that we never get to see at the combine and all of this. We don't get to see the interviews, right? We hear that somebody had an interview with the Patriots or whatever, but you don't know,
right,
like how it actually goes. And then when these guys, when you stand in front of them and you're listening to them talk, and you're listening to other people talk about them, you're like, okay, yeah, no, I understand why. It's because this guy, he craves the coaching, right? He wants to get better, and everything is just about football. I'm going to get this right. I'm going to do my job. That's what Tyquan Thornton's like. That's what the Joneses are like. It's what Cole Strange is like.
Yeah, no, it's great. And you know what? The other thing about the evaluation process is like Devonta Smith did it literally last year. He's like the same body type. And so it's like, and he's not, I mean, listen, he was an unbelievable route technician, won the Heisman Trophy for a
Yeah.
reason. I get it. But like, if you're looking at just at the frame, it's
Yeah.
like, well, like he's the same guy, as far as frame wise. So it didn't make any sense to me. But anyways, let's move on. The one last guy I want to talk about, then we'll talk about kind of some ups and downs from overall from the campus. Pierre Strong. Pierre Strong's a guy. Now, Kevin Harris has gotten a ton of work, with the twos. Pierre Strong's been running with the ones, but not really been running with the ones, right? And you mentioned, we talked about this a little bit before. You mentioned that, today he was kind of running drills on his own down at one of the lower fields. But then he must have been doing it with Lil Jordan Humphrey too, because he disappeared for most of practice today too. So I assume he was down there because I didn't see him. And then he came back magically at the end of practice.
Yeah.
Like, where the hell did he go? So, but I haven't seen a ton of Pierre Strong out there. And I'm curious as to why you think that is, right? Is he going to get the Foxborough flu and end up on IR like James White and Damian Harris did his rookie year? Or are they just kind of saving him for later? I don't know what you think.
Well, I think that's probably I think that he stands a decent chance of getting some Foxborough flu here because, I mean, I think that he still has some body type that needs to be built up a little. But I'm not 100% sure just yet that I'm going to put him in that category because I think that he brings something to the running back room that they don't entirely have. Like that speed is very notable, right? I mean, Damian Harris can get moving when he's got the ball in his hands. He's actually one of the faster, guys at his position.
Yeah.
Once he gets going downhill, he's routinely up there with the fastest ball carriers every week. Like it's very interesting. And Ramondre Stevenson, I mean, he's just a good all around player. And I think he's keeping, going to continue getting better. But I think that with Strong, he just has great raw speed, and the offense that they are going to run this year, I think with more zones, more cutbacks, and getting these offensive linemen on the edge and seeking out cutback lanes, I think that's going to play really well for Pierre Strong. So I think that perhaps, and this is something that happened a little bit in OTAs and minicamp, a little bit of let's not pull the Ferrari out of the garage just yet, right?
Yeah.
Let's give him a little time. We don't have to do this. I mean, they've got Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, and Ty Montgomery taking the three. I mean, they're going to be the top three running backs. Like that is set. So I think it's like, why move this along if we don't have to? I think the difference with Tyquan Thornton is that at this point he's kind of shown that he's a little bit more ready to go on the outside. And so they're giving him more opportunities, whether it's with the ones or the twos. And with Pierre Strong, you don't have to do that. And at the same time, I think that it'd be hard not to think that, he's going to, make the team and have an opportunity every once in a while. Like, hey, like you want to carry and just like, see how it goes, especially if we're playing a team that we know we're going to beat on. Like we don't respect the Jets and we're blowing him out. Like, hey, Pierre, why don't you get some carries, bro? But I think it is interesting that Kevin Harris has been getting more burn. And I think it might be because of the body, and maybe even just the, I think he's got a little bit more in the passing game right now, both from a pass pro perspective and a pass catching perspective. So maybe that's something that they're just looking for Pierre Strong to develop a little bit more.
Yeah, makes sense. You're talking about lower body when you're talking about Tyquan Thornton, and my God, Kevin Harris's legs are ridiculous.
Oh boy, he's got some logs, he got some tree trunks down there.
Yes, he does. It's crazy. One last guy before we go into James White. What's your feeling on James White? Because I almost wonder now. Troy Brown. This is a little bit, long time ago, but Troy Brown, end of his career, came back for one more year, didn't have it, couldn't play. Just literally couldn't play. He wasn't healthy. And they gave him a contract anyways and said, Troy, we love you. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to give you a contract, even though we know you're probably never going to play again. We're going to give you a contract anyways. And I just wonder if that's the case with James White. I just don't know. That injury is such a bad injury. And at his age, I just don't know if he's ever going to get there. But I don't know. Have you heard from anyone in the organization? Do you think that, he could come back and play? I mean, what's your feeling on that?
I haven't heard anything about whether or not they think he can come back and play, but I'll tell you this. I mean, Mike Reese has said it recently. And I mean, I saw James White at one point during OTAs and minicamp. Like he just doesn't look comfortable. He's not looking
Right.
right the way that he's walking. And I personally don't expect to see him this year. I think that he'll land on PUP and then he will stay on IR for the rest of the season. That's how I think this is going to go. And I have come to kind of think a very similar thing, that essentially this is it's he's not on a very expensive deal. I'm
Right.
sure they understood and understand where he is at physically, and I think there's a good chance that they were just saying, look, okay, if you can come back and play this year, great, but if not, you're on the payroll, you're taken care of. And then if you can't play, then retire as a member of the Patriots.
Yeah.
I think that's what it'll be. I don't necessarily think they're going to just like throw him out on the street and make him go play someplace else. I think that he's given so much to this team that would be, I don't know. I don't think that I would expect that, but yeah, from just all the indications, the feeling about it, the fact that you have heard nothing about James White seems to suggest that this is probably not going to happen for him this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't happen again.
Right.
I would hate to see that because,
Of course.
again, he's so loved here. Like they talk about him all the time, in the running back room and just on the offense, period, the way that they respect him. So I would hate for that snap last year to be the last one that he had in the NFL. I was in the building that day and the air was sucked out of the building. It really was.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'd love to see him in a Patriots uniform again, but if not, I think that they're going to take care of him.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's kind of my feeling on it too. And it's unfortunate. I mean, you think about back-to-back years, right? 2020 with the car accident with his parents, and then 2021, obviously the injury. So, tough few years for him. But I think, and this is what Bill does. Like people talk shit about Bill all the time, but this is what he does. He takes care of the guys that are there. Like I said, Troy back in the day, I think it was 07. I think it was 07, where like he couldn't play, and they knew he couldn't play, but they said, no, we don't care. Like we're giving him the contract anyways because he deserves it, and he's been here, and so we're going to give him the contract. And if at the absolute least, he can be a leader in the clubhouse for these guys and be a role model for the guys that are here, right? And so that's one of those things for me that I hope that isn't the case with James White. I'd love to see him come back and play, but I just don't know if that's going to happen. So. Anyways, I want to ask you your number one guy from camp. Just if you had to, and we talked about a bunch of guys today, but if you had to pick one guy, I'm going to pick one guy too. But I'll go after you, so I'll let you get first choice. Your guy that's kind of flashed to you that you've been most excited about camp.
So if we're going to take Mac Jones out of the equation, because I think that he's probably been the guy throughout camp. I think that he's been very good. As you mentioned, he's been locked in. I think the chemistry with the wide receivers has been excellent. And just generally, he has fully taken on the role of a leader of this team. But I feel like if there's one guy that I think really has opened eyes, it's been Devonte Parker. I think that the receivers generally have played well, and I think that Jonnu Smith has he came on, especially today, the way that he, popped and made a couple of those grabs. I think that he's also stood out. But I would say that the guy that popped that I think is, going to be the most important, because you're kind of wondering how he's going to fit into this operation, is Parker, and the way that he physically, kind of dominated, but also that toe tapping back shoulder throw, like again, to already have that chemistry with Mac Jones, and you just joined the team, right? Like this is just a professional receiver, a dude who just works at his craft, knows what he's doing. And the way that Hunter Henry's is like, yes, he's going to make it easier for all of us. And this is something that I've talked about, the fact that Devante Parker's mere presence, and again, this is only red zone stuff, right? That they've done so far, only red zone. But the fact that his mere presence means that you can move guys like Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Ford and Jacoby Myers all around the formation, because especially in this part of the field, you need to have a real guy guarding Devonte Parker, because otherwise you just throw it up and he'll find a way to come down with it. So I feel like that's tremendously important. I do have one other guy that I think has definitely stood out, but I want to hear yours, because I want to see if we got the same guy.
All right. I think we might. You went offense. I'm going to go defense. And Jalen Mills, I think, has been great. I'm not going to pick Jalen Mills, though, but he's been fantastic. But my guy is Josh Bledsoe. He, second year safety out of Missouri. He's popped, man. He's popped. And he was on IR last year, actually came off in practice for a bit,
Yeah.
but never actually played. But, he can play. It looks like he can play. And again, it's early. We don't know. But like chances usually guys that are around the ball like that as much and as consistently as he has been the first 3 days of camp, those guys typically can play. And Jabril Peppers isn't even out there right now, right? And so
Yeah.
when you talk about, Adrian Phillips and Devin McCourty and Jabril Peppers, and now Josh Bledsoe looks like he can play,
Kyle
and you're
Duggar,
looking
yeah.
and Duggar, of course, right? And so now you're looking at it like we have 5 safeties that we could throw out there at any time. And he's played safety, he's played slot corner. I've been super excited to see him. I was extremely impressed with him the first day I saw him. And then I've been there all 3 days. And so, the first day I was like, oh my God, he's making some plays. And then the second day I'm like, he's still there making plays. Like that's so,
Yeah.
that's really impressed me a lot. So he may not have the impact that Parker will have, but I do think it looks like he can play.
That was going to be my guy as well. I mean, if you're just talking about guys that have been, wow, like revelations, he's the biggest one, right? Like he's been one of the best players out there. And again, I mentioned Jack Jones and the way that he plays coverage. Josh Bledsoe has those similar instincts. That play that he had on Jonnu Smith yesterday, where he knocked it down in the back corner of the end zone, I believe that was in 7-on-7s. That was a play that again, like not all safeties have that instinct to make that play, right? Because again, it was a scenario where Mack and Jonnu Smith thought they had him, right? It was a same kind of play, like back shoulder, like I'm running this way, throw it behind me, I got him. There's no way that this defensive back is going to adjust. And he must have had his eye on the ball kind of out of the corner of his eye or something, but he whips his head around at the last moment and gets the arm in there to knock it away. And I feel like so many other young players, especially who like playing this position, they get beat there because they don't know how to find the football yet, but he did. And that, I think, really kind of stood out to me. He had another one where he knocked it away at the last second from Dalton Keene, front corner of the end zone. He locked up Devin Asiasi on a crossing route. I mean, I just feel like when the pads are on, I just don't know that a whole lot is going to change, right? I mean, he's clearly got the athleticism and the ability and the instincts to make plays and be around the football. And he was getting first team reps today. They basically said, hey, Devin, you want the day off? And they put Josh Bledsoe back there because they want to give him a look because they're rewarding him for the way that he's played. And again, I think that you mentioned the 5 safeties thing. You got all 5 of those guys potentially able to play reliably. Like you can not just like a special teams thing, like you could put them on the field. Then I think that this makes the possibility of they're going to put 3 safeties out there plenty. I think that was their favorite defensive lineup last year, was their big nickel look. I think there's a possibility they're going to put 4 safeties out there. Semi-regularly, right? Especially when you get these teams that want to, spread you out with all their speed. They got mismatches all over the place, and they want to go empty. Why not? Why not put that personnel group out there because they've got speed and athletic ability and versatility all over the place. So even if Josh Bledsoe isn't going to be a guy who's playing in that situation, I mean, probably Jabril Peppers would be the guy doing it if he's healthy, but just being able to have another body in the room that, hey, if something happens to one of these guys, he can adequately fill in. That makes you think that you could put 4 safeties out there and not have it be the craziest thing.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting to see, and you kind of feel like that's got to be where they're headed because they drafted Kyle Duggar, right, for a reason. Obviously, they re-upped Adrian Phillips this offseason, right? Or no, they signed Adrian Phillips last offseason. They re-signed him, right?
Yep.
And then they go out and sign Jabril Peppers, and so they know that they have all these safeties, and so you got to think that this is where they're going with it, and it makes sense because obviously they didn't re-sign Gilmore and J.C. Jackson. Let's pretend like that. I didn't say that because I can't. It just makes me upset. But either way. So, all right. Anyone that you have been disappointed in camp? I have one on the tip of my tongue. Anyone that you've been kind of disappointed with in camp, or maybe not even disappointed, but just kind of surprised that you didn't get what you thought you would from them.
A little bit of, I would say Nelson Aguilar is probably one of the first names that comes to mind, and I don't know that I would say that he's been really bad, right? I mean, he definitely had like a fade route catch yesterday. I mean, he was kind of in on that bonanza of big plays down by
Yeah.
the goal line. So, I mean, he's flashed at times, but I think there were also times where his execution wasn't quite there, where he had one throw that went out the back of the end zone yesterday. And like he caught it, but he just couldn't quite get his feet in bounds. It just seemed like he let his momentum carry him outside of the end zone. I would have liked to see him try to drag
Get
the
the feet
feet a
down.
little bit.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a continuation of some of the things that we saw last year where, I mean, him running and like being able to get open isn't typically the problem. All right. Because I mean, he's clearly very fast,
Yeah.
but tracking the ball and kind of knowing what to do with it at times feels like it's a little bit of an issue for him. So I thought that was a bit frustrating, and he didn't really do anything today. I have to look back and see if he made a catch. He might have had like one catch today,
Right.
but I feel like, especially for Devonte Parker being what I expect him to be and kind of opening things up, like I think Nelson Aguilar should be one of the biggest beneficiaries of that.
Right.
And I feel like I haven't seen as much from him so far in training camp as I had in OTAs and minicamp, where it seemed like he was flashing a little bit more, making some bigger plays. So I would like to see a little bit from him. It's not so much that I'm disappointed or I think he's been bad. I just think I have expected to see more.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned it, but like I think, him and Jacoby Myers almost are like exact opposites, right? Where Myers kind of, I feel like the finer points of wide receiver play, sometimes he doesn't pay attention to that stuff quite as much. Whereas Jacoby is like, that's what he does. He lives off of that
I
because
mean,
he doesn't have,
that's how he wins, because he doesn't
right.
have elite speed, so he has to have the other things down. Again, it's like I don't think that it's necessarily that Nelson is like a bad route runner or
Right.
things. I just feel like there are certain things when it comes to, yeah, like his athleticism is like, well, I mean, like his footwork, right, and little
Yeah.
things of like tracking the ball where. I don't know that I would put it as like he doesn't pay attention to them. I just am not sure that he, you know, that it's instinctive to him,
Right.
right? Like I think for some guys they just get it, right? Like that's like what they do, and I don't think that Nelson Aguilar is not putting in the work. It's just he has to kind of think about it a little bit more because it's not as natural. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
No, I agree. The guy for me is Devin Asiasi. I mean, I just think
Yeah.
he doesn't have it, man. And I'm so disappointed because he coming out of UCLA, I thought he was going to be awesome. And
I've honestly almost forgotten about him.
he just can't
And
do it. He just can't do it.
I mean he had a touchdown catch, I believe it was yesterday, where he is like a little out route by the end zone. And he almost dropped that.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so it's like he had to like bobble it and control it before it goes out of bounds. Like you can't make anything easy on yourself, can
No,
you?
he can't. He's good dropping passes and drills. And I'm like, what do you like? You're running like an in route on it. You're doing an in cut on a drill and you're dropping passes. Like, what are we doing here, man? Like, you got to make the team. Like, So, hey, I'm all set. I'm off the Devin Asiasi train. But
Yeah.
it is what it is. So, anything that you're looking forward to camp? Of course, we have camp tomorrow on Saturday, or I guess today if you're listening in podcast form. We have camp on Saturday, and then full pads go on Monday. Is there any storyline or anything that you're looking for in particular in this next week that you're looking to see?
So I'm going to be looking, as is my wont, because I find wide receiver play very interesting. I want to see if your boy Trey Nixon,
My God.
if he can get it done in pads. Because look, I think that, and this is something that I've heard from, kind of the second hand from people around the media tent, is that people inside Gillette Stadium are cautiously optimistic that Trey Nixon is going to have a little bit better showing than he did last year. But again, they're just like, look, I mean, we got to see if he does it in pads, because last
Right.
year he just kind of disappeared once the pads came on. And even talking a little bit about, apparently they don't want him to get too big, they don't want him to get over 190 pounds or too much over that, because they don't want him to be the Julian Edelman kind of slot guy, like the big beefy, kind of stocky guy. They want him to be like a slot burner kind of guy, because they already have sort of a Julian Edelman type body in Jacoby
Right.
Myers, who
Yeah.
that guy he's clearly put in some off-season work. He is looking strong. But they want Trey Nixon to have a little bit of a different body type. So I'm curious, like how he holds that weight in pads, how he gets off the line against these guys. I feel like that's going to be a big one, and I want to see. You mentioned this already, like and Marcus Jones when the pads come on, how is their physicality going to translate? Because again, I think Jack has been very, very aggressive without pads, and he's obviously going to be aggressive with pads.
Yeah.
But then once people can kind of out leverage you a little bit, and it's like this ain't fun and games anymore. This is real football, right? It's like, is that going to is he going to be able to step up with that, or is he going to have a little bit more of like welcome to the NFL kind of stuff? Because I don't necessarily buy that Terrence Mitchell is locked in as the number one cornerback.
I agree.
I mean, you got Malcolm Butler there as well. I still think there's an opening for Jack Jones. I really do. And even if it doesn't happen by the time the season begins, I mean, I think there's a possibility that mid-year or by the end of the year, he's getting starter level reps, or he's at least in the rotation where he's playing. And it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up being one of the rookie leaders in interceptions.
I love it. I love it. The Trey Nixon thing, you're totally right. I mean, listen, if he shows out in one of these preseason games, I'm going to go out and buy a conductor hat and just wear it on the podcast, because I am the conductor of the hype train. I literally, he was the, it's the Ernie Adams connection. It's really what it was for me. Like, I'm like, Ernie Adams drafted him in the 7th round. He's going to be a stud. And so I've been saying it since the day he got drafted. So, but, those concerns are real. You saw yesterday, he went up against Joanne Williams. Joanne swallowed him up, and it was a bad throw by Hoyer, but it doesn't matter. He swallowed up Trey Nixon and easily picked off a pass from Brian Hoyer. So that's one of those things where it is a little concerning, where you start looking at it and saying, like, okay, what are we going to do now? If he's in the slot, is he going to be outside against guys the size of Joanne Williams? No, but still, you want to see him not get manhandled out there. So, so that's definitely something to look for. I think, to me, my biggest thing I'm looking for when they put the pads on is the linebackers, because we haven't seen anything. We haven't seen anything from McMillan. We haven't seen anything from Cam McGrone. And I think a guy that, Uche, everyone wants Uche to take a step forward. The guy that I'm really focused on is Ronnie Perkins, because Perkins is a guy that did nothing last year, was a healthy scratch every single game, wasn't on the IR, wasn't on the PUP list. He was there. He just never played. And, he's a guy that, is the only defensive lineman last year on PFF to have a 90 rating, against the pass and against the run. Yeah. He can kind of do it all, but are they going to have him at outside linebacker? Are they going to have him at D? It seems like he's been rotating in at D end, but it's hard to really see what they're doing. 11 on 11, he rotates in every now and again, but, where are they going to have him playing? And I think that I'm very interested in seeing what the linebackers look like once the pads come on. It's a lot easier to see what's going on when they have pads. Right now, they're just running around chasing wide receivers around. So it's going to be a lot more interesting when you can see them kind of playing the run and how that's going to all work. But to me, it's Perkins and McGrone are the two guys for me from last year's draft class, where you're relying pretty heavily on those two guys to make a leap this year. That, of course, neither of them played last year. So, you're hoping that those guys can make a leap and play well, right? And so I would say those four guys, but in particular, Perkins and McGrone are the two guys that I'm most excited to see.
Most definitely. And I think that Perkins and Josh Uche as well are going to be some of the biggest storylines of this team that not a lot of people are necessarily talking about, because everybody's concerned with the linebackers and the corners and who's calling the plays and all that junk, right? Where's this pass rush going to come from?
Right.
And I did notice a little bit of Ronnie Perkins getting a little bit of pressure, and Josh Uche had one where, again, I mean, so somebody was saying, padless. Josh Uche in no pads practice is an absolute legend. I mean, we're flying off the edge. I mean, he can fly off the edge with the pads on too. I mean, he clearly has done that. It's just like, can we do this every play?
Right.
Like, they need that. They absolutely need that from him. And I think that, again, more or less what you're going to get from Matthew Judon. I mean, that guy is clearly one of the leaders of this team and one of its most dependable players, but you got to get something else from these other dudes.
100%.
I mean, there's no way around it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. So, but anyways, we'll wrap this guy up. It's been a lot of fun, Kyrie. Thank you so much for coming through. I really appreciate it. There's a ton to look out for. I know, and you're killing it. You're killing it over there at EEI. As a matter of fact, what's crazy is that at Boston.com, you're being replaced by Kyrie Thompson. I know he pronounces it a little differently, but
Yeah.
it's insane that the byline's going to look the same.
Yeah, so he said he's gonna go by Kari A. Thompson on there.
There
So
you go.
that's how we're gonna differentiate because I'm Kyrie. So he's Kari, I
Yep.
am Kyrie.
There
But
you go.
it's also Kyrie D. Thompson.
See, yep.
I don't know what the A stands for. My D's for Dominic. So
there you go.
Yeah. Keep an eye. Don't call me that though. Please don't call me that.
I will not. I promise.
Only my mother ever called me that. So don't do that. But yeah, I mean, the funny thing about it is that Kari's from here. Like he's from like the Jamaica Plain, Roxbury area. So this is like his dream job to come back here and work for Boston.com and write about sports in his hometown, man. So I mean, I talked to him. I knew this was coming. Actually, it's funny because we've known of each other since 2018. He liked one of my tweets back then, and I was like, I know I didn't like one of my tweets. What is this? So it's funny. I put out that tweet earlier. It's like Boston sports are gonna be so confused. I was confused.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I'm like, why is my name showing up under? I remember why. But yeah, it's like people would confuse us all the time. It's like, oh yeah, I think I went to high school with you, and I was like, no, you didn't, because I'm not from here. So it's been fun these last couple of years, like trading, like. Even when I'd be on the radio a couple of times, you'd be like, man, you must really be doing great at EEI, killing it on the radio, because people keep on DMing me and telling me how well you're doing. So it's going to be great to have him around here. Everybody says we should do a podcast together. We probably should. It would probably be great.
That'd be awesome. I'd love it. Even just he should have a guest. He should be a guest on the First and Foxborough podcast. Just like, hey, come on.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
That might have to be one of the first things that happens once he officially gets his job.
For sure. Thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. Look, plug yourself before everyone leaves. Obviously, I just mentioned First and Foxborough. Subscribe to that if you're not already, people. Come on, let's go. Figure it out.
Yes, please do. I need these downloads. I'm serious. Okay. But also you can find me at KD Thompson 5. I am always on Twitter, literally always on Twitter. So you can interact with me there, interact with the show. You can follow the show account at First and Foxborough, FOXBORO, not the UGH. So the UGH version is what the podcast is billed as, because hey, we got to be proper. This is an Odyssey podcast,
right?
Okay? Because people who aren't necessarily from here might look at it and be like, oh, like where's the UGH? Isn't it technically that's how it's spelled? But look, for those of y'all who are from here and you know that FOXBORO version, I got you. Okay, follow that podcast. I am basically trying to give you something every single day when I'm at camp, when I'm at practice, and the Patriots PR staff have been amazing at getting me players. So I'm going to be trying to give you one-on-one interviews with your New England Patriots. So stay tuned.
Yep. As we mentioned, I already did one with Trey Nixon, our guy, Trey Nixon. So, but thanks so much, Kyrie. Appreciate it, man. And best of luck. Enjoy the season. We'll have to have you on another time too.
Anytime.